Hey, Professor Homa, welcome to part 8, I believe, of our Buffalo Wild Wings. A lot of parts to this project, and we're in InDesign right now. And just a little intro to InDesign, a couple things that you got to be careful with. When you first launch InDesign, make sure in your preferences, and you can't change this when you make a new document, and it can really be a headache, and I probably should have showed this on the last video or the last project with the book cover. But one thing you want to do is check your units and make sure that you're working in inches in here, horizontal and vertical. Make sure that you're on inches in there. Stroke and type can be points, but you want to make sure you're working on inches, not picas. So I'll make sure that that's set up first. And then also, as far as your layout in here, I'm going to go to Window. I like to keep application frame on because that keeps everything gray in the background and you don't see anything else behind you, which could screw you up or just get you confused, especially since a lot of these programs look the same when you're working in them. So you want to make sure when you're in InDesign, you're working in InDesign. We're going to be going back and forth between Illustrator and InDesign in this portion. Also, as far as the workspace, I like to work in advanced. It doesn't mean it's really advanced for anything you're doing, but if you go to Window Workspace and you reset advanced, it may make these things short. If they are, make sure you stretch them out so you can see what these palettes are. Also, I like the toolbar to be in the two columns like that. That way you have a little preview button, which makes it easier to preview your layout that you're working on. Okay, I'm going to start a new file here, and I'm going to go File, New Document. And I'm going to make sure that it's the same size that I'm working on, which is the 6 inches wide by 4 1/4. And as far as my margins, and margins aren't that crucial, but I want to keep it down around 1/4 inch. It doesn't mean I have to stick to those margins, but it gives me because our image is gonna bleed to the edge, but we want some margin on there. So 1/4 inch will probably be fine for what we're working on. We don't need bleed and slug. We don't have to worry about gutter, or orientation is set automatically. You can uncheck facing pages. We're gonna have 2 pages, but they don't have to be facing, so we could put 2 in there. And that should be it. 6 by 4 1/4, 2 pages. Our intent is print, no facing pages or primary text frame, and 1/4 inch all around margins. So I'll hit OK. And there's my document. And I have 2 pages here. If I scroll down, I'll have my second page. And our first page will be the front of the postcard. That'll have our picture. I'm going to use my arrow, and I'm going to place in our TIFF file. And I'm going to do that by going to File, Place. And I'm going to go back to my sample document here into my postcard, and I'm going to bring in my TIFF file. And there's my TIFF file, and I'll get the loaded cursor. I'm just going to click it right in the corner here. And that's all I really need. Now, we could eventually use layers to put things on top, but I won't worry about that right now. So we just have to put our logo on top of here and our type on top of here. Now, to put our logo on here, we're going to need an EPS logo. So I'm going to have to go back into Illustrator. Now, one thing also, just to show up, that when you bring in, whether it's an EPS or a TIFF file, they will be linked. It's like a web page. They'll be, you know, this document will need these other images. They don't get embedded in here. They're not part of this document. They are linked. So just be aware of that. That's why we have to keep them in a folder, all in the same folder, or even in an images folder, so it maintains the same path to those images. So before I do anything, I'm going to do a file save as, and save this as Buffalo Wild Wings postcard. So I'll use this, and it's putting InDD here. So that's pretty much all I want. So it's putting InDD for the file name or the extension at the end, and the same file name that I use for my TIFF and my Photoshop document. So I'll save that, and I'm going to go back to Illustrator, and this is how the one's going to look. The one that's going to actually go in the back with the black type. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go File, New, and it doesn't matter what size. If it's a letter size, that's fine. And I'm going to paste this and make it a little bit smaller, because I know it's going to be smaller on the back of the postcard. This is for the back of the postcard, and the only reason I'm making a different one is because this one is black and the other one's white. So what I'm going to do to make an EPS image is I'm just going to go, and notice I pasted it to a new document, so there's nothing around it. And I'm going to go File, Save As. And I'll make sure I keep it in that same folder that I was working in. Keep it in that same work file. And I'm going to change the format to EPS. And I'm just going to call it BWW logo. and I might just put it like black after it so I know that that's the logo with the black in it, since I'll have one with white in it as well. So it's changed the format to EPS and also the file name to EPS, same folder, and I'll hit save and I'll hit OK. And that's it. And this will act just like a normal Illustrator file. There's nothing, it's not like the way a TIFF is as a flattened file. It won't flatten everything. So it'll work like a normal Illustrator file. You could open it the same way. And I'm also going to do this. I'm going to make another one. I'll make sure this is, since I just saved this, I'm going to highlight all this stuff and I'm going to make it white. And I'm going to highlight this stuff down here, and I'll make sure I get that little register mark or the trademark, and I'll make sure that this is black. And this is the one that's going on the front. And I might even make this a little bigger. And I'm doing all this before I save it. So I'll make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to do a file save as. And I'll say it's going to EPS again. This time I'll just make it black. Or this time I'll just make it white. And I'll hit save. And for these options here, unless you have to put it down to a lower version, this should be fine. And I'll hit OK. And that's it. And I could close these up, and I still have my original Illustrator file that I did my original tracing. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to InDesign, and I'll go to this one first, and I'll just do File Place, and I'm going to look for my black EPS. And to scale this down, two ways to scale this down. One is if you hold Shift, Option, Command, and grab this corner, you could scale it down. That's one way to do it. The other way is if you click in the middle here, it actually scales the image inside of there, and you could go down, make sure this is locked, and scale it down that way. And you can see it makes it smaller than the frame. So if you want the frame to be the same, and I'll go down again, I'll take it down to maybe 60. Now if you want the frame to be the same size as the content, just select the frame, the blue part, and it won't always be blue, it depends on the layer, and just go Object, Fitting, Fit Frame to Content. So two ways to scale it. You could grab on the frame and do Shift, Option, Command. On the edge here, Shift, Option, Command, or just Shift Command will work too. Or you could click on the middle with the hand tool and use this thing, or grab the corner of it, and then realize that you're scaling it different than the frame. So it's a little confusing, and even when you move it, you want to make sure you kind of click off and don't grab it here, grab over here. And I'm just going to put it up in the corner, and that's fine right now. It might even be a little on the small side. I might even scale it. And again, you could scale as much as you want, because remember it's vector artwork. You know, and if you ever do this by accident, you know, you scaled the frame and not the content. So if you want to scale the content, you could go in here and grab a corner, just hold Shift and do that, and then the frame doesn't matter, but you may want to just get it down, and you don't want to crop it. You know, you could crop this if you didn't want that stuff. You could crop it off like that. But we're not going to crop it. We're just going to leave it there, and if you hit preview, you can see how it looks. And if you see the quality looks kind of low quality, you could go to View, Display Performance, and put it on High Quality Display. That'll show you nice crisp quality. And then also on this page, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place again, and I'm going to do File Place, and I'm going to place in my white logo. And I'm going to bring that over here. And now I'm not sure about the size right now, because remember the size that I had it in my Photoshop one was a little different, so I'm going to have to scale this down a little bit. And I should have done something to note exactly how the size is, because this might be, and what I might do here is just make my frame bigger, and then kind of click on the middle here and just kind of scale this logo, because I want it down here so I see the, so I get it down to the glow part. And actually that looks pretty good the way I have it right now. It may not be perfect. I'd have to zoom in a little bit and make sure I have that okay. Maybe just a little bit bigger. It looks like this is going down needs to go down just a little bit more. You know, and I could always use this to go up or down a little bit. And that looks pretty good. And again, I should have probably kept track of what the percentage was when I did it in Photoshop, which you can do when you paste it in. You could look at the top of the control palette, but I'm going to leave it like that for now. I'll zoom out. and I'll click off so I have the whole image again, and I'll also do that object fitting fit frame to content. I'll grab this, and that looks pretty good. And you can see if I zoom in on this, I have really nice quality. And I think this needs to go up a little bit because I don't think the drop shadow should be. I'm going to move that up because I think the drop shadow should be down a little bit. That's probably a little better. See how I'm going to glow? And I think that looks okay. That looks pretty good. So I have my crisp vector artwork. And then the next thing I'm going to have to do is put my text in here. Well, everything else is fine, but I'm just going to put text in here. And I'll just do that real quick. I'll just click on here and say, "Get out tonight." And remember, in InDesign, what I have to do is take my text tool and draw I'll turn off my preview here and just draw a rectangle here that goes like right about there. That way I'll kind of center that area, and I'll just type "Get out tonight" with an exclamation point, and I'll highlight it, and I'll put it in my awk in bold. Now as far as size, and I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to center it so it kind of centers in that area. And I'll use my alignment up here to center it. And now as far as sizing, I'll kind of put it up to like 36. That's probably too big. Get it down a little bit. And it looks like about 30, might even be 29.5. And remember, we're just using the drop shadow, so I have to move it down. And also another thing we're going to do is put a stroke on here, and I could do that in InDesign. I could just highlight all my text in here and put a stroke on it. Could use paper and do it over there, 2-point white. I'll see how that looks. And that looks like a little much. So I'll go back and I'll put it like 1 point. I think I could put 1.5 in here. And that looks pretty good. And I'll zoom in. I'll put it on preview, and I'll zoom in just to make sure it looks okay. And the drop shadow looks pretty good. I think everything looks pretty good on here. And you can see this is nice crisp text. That wouldn't happen if I had embedded it in the TIFF file. So that looks even better than I thought it would look. So that looks pretty good. So we have our front and back finished here. So we only have a little bit of tweaking to do, and we're going to make our PDF and make sure I save this one last time. And we should only have one more video left.